Bu
The
dansı
invitation
yıllardır
arrived in a
yapmamıştım.
diplomatic
Gerçekten
capsule the
mi? Hiç
size of
belli
my thumb,
olmuyor.
which burrowed through
Çok
the hull of our
zarifsin.
orbital embassy and politely unfolded itself on my desk like a metallic flower. It projected a seal made of shifting light, an imperial sigil shaped like a crescent threaded with stars, and then a single line of text, "You are cordially required." I stared at it for a long moment. "Required," I muttered. That's already less comforting than invited. Across the room, Ambassador Havel didn't look up from her hollow screens. If it helps, they only use that phrasing when they're trying to avoid a war. That helps in the same way a parachute helps after you've left the aircraft. The masquerade ball was to be held aboard the Imperium's drifting palace, a structure grown rather than built. As our shuttle approached, I watched luminous arches rise from its surface like frozen waves of glass. Streams of traffic, alien vessels in shapes that ignored geometry out of spite, flowed toward docking bays that shimmered open and closed like blinking eyes. I adjusted my collar for the 10th time. "Remind me why I'm going." "Cultural liaison," Havel said. "You're very good at talking without starting incidents." "That's because I rarely know what's happening." "Exactly." The docking corridor reconfigured itself around us, adapting to human gravity preferences. I appreciated the courtesy. I did not appreciate the silent line of Imperial guards waiting at the threshold. They looked almost human, which somehow made them more intimidating. Smooth features, composed expressions, and those ears, long, elegant, tapering backward in graceful arcs. Delicate metallic filaments traced their edges, faintly luminous like circuitry pretending to be jewelry. One of them inclined her head. "Welcome, please refrain from sudden atmospheric adjustments." "I wasn't planning to adjust any atmospheres," I said. Her gaze lingered on me a fraction too long. "Humans are known for improvisation. Only under extreme boredom." Inside, the grand hall unfolded in impossible scale. The ceiling was not a ceiling, but a controlled aperture to open space, filtered by a translucent field. Nebulae spilled color across the chamber. The floor shimmered with responsive light, mapping footsteps in fading constellations. Musicians stood on a suspended platform, their instruments humming with quantum resonance. Each note seemed to arrive slightly before it was played, as if time had been persuaded to cooperate. Masks were mandatory. Mine projected a stylized fox, complete with subtle motion tracking so the ears twitched when I frowned. It was either charming or humiliating. I decided to commit to charming. Delegations clustered by species. A six-limbed envoy from the Perseid Combine rotated slowly in place, conversing through harmonic pulses. Two crystalline beings debated trade tariffs by altering their internal refraction. Humanity's corner featured cautious smiles and emergency exit awareness. "This is harmless," Havel murmured beside me. "Music symbolism, nothing more." That sentence has started every disaster in recorded history. The orchestra shifted into a sweeping rhythm. Couples formed across the hall, movements synchronized with microgravity adjustments that made each step slightly buoyant. It felt less like dancing and more like negotiating with physics. I had just convinced myself that I could survive an evening of polite nodding when she appeared. She wore silver. Not merely the color, but light itself, woven into fabric that responded to her pulse in faint waves. Her mask was a crescent curve across her eyes, minimal and precise. Dark hair flowed over one shoulder, partially obscuring the elongated line of one ear. Even concealed, it was unmistakable, longer than the guards, adorned with fine metallic threads that flickered in delicate patterns. She moved without hesitation. No searching glance, no diplomatic calculation visible. She crossed the distance between us as if the crowd parted by instinct rather than coincidence. She stopped in front of me. "You," she said. It was not a question. I glanced over my shoulder. "Me." Her head tilted slightly. Up close, I could see faint geometric patterns along her skin, almost imperceptible, like circuitry grown beneath flesh. "You are human." "I've been told. Dance with me." Behind me, I sensed Ambassador Havel experiencing silent cardiac distress. "I should warn you," I said carefully. "I was trained in Earth gravity." "We have compensated," she replied. Before I could invent an excuse involving sudden illness or diplomatic allergy, her hand found mine. Warm, steady. The music shifted as if recalibrated to our proximity. The floor adjusted beneath our feet, lowering local gravity just enough to soften each step. She guided with effortless precision. I focused on not colliding with anyone of political importance. "You seem tense," she observed. I'm calculating the number of ways this can end poorly. And I ran out of numbers. A faint curve touched her mouth. Up close, the illusion of humanity was almost complete. Smooth skin, expressive eyes, subtle breath. But her ears, now fully visible as she turned, were extraordinary. Long and refined, they angled slightly backward, the metallic filaments along their edges glowing softly in response to ambient sound. Each note of the orchestra made them shimmer. "You are observing," she said. "I'm trying not to stare." "Why, it's considered impolite where I'm from. And yet you continue." "Professional weakness." She studied me in silence for several steps. Around us, dancers revolved in widening arcs. I was acutely aware of watching eyes, imperial nobles, foreign envoys, every movement recorded by 1,000 discrete sensors. "You do not attempt to impress me," she said at last. "I didn't realize I was meant to." "Most would." I assumed I was selected by accident. "There are no accidents tonight." That sentence should have unsettled me. Instead, I found myself smiling beneath the fox mask. That's comforting in a deeply alarming way. Her laughter was soft, brief, almost surprised. The filaments along her ears brightened faintly. The orchestra swelled. We turned in a slow arc that brought the entire hall into view. I caught sight of Havel watching with the expression of someone mentally drafting apology letters to multiple star systems. "Tell me about your world," she said. "It's loud," I answered, "and messy. We trip over our own ambitions." "And yet you endure." "Mostly out of stubbornness." She seemed to consider that. "Stubbornness can be useful." "Not according to my superiors. Perhaps they lack imagination." The music shifted key. Her hand tightened slightly against mine, not possessive, not nervous. Intentional. In that moment, I realized something unsettling. She had not scanned the crowd before choosing me. She had walked directly here. And as we turned once more beneath the open stars, I began to suspect that I was not attending a harmless masquerade at all. The music did not merely continue, it adapted. I felt it first through the floor, a subtle recalibration of gravity that drew us into a slower orbit around each other. The orchestra's quantum strings shifted frequencies, harmonizing with something in the air, perhaps with her. The dancers around us adjusted unconsciously, widening the space as if guided by an invisible algorithm prioritizing our trajectory. "You are distracted," she said. "I'm trying to determine whether this is a dance or a tactical maneuver." "Does it matter?" "It might if I'm about to sign a treaty with my feet." Her fingers rested lightly against my shoulder, her posture precise without being rigid. Up close, I noticed faint lines of light pulsing beneath her skin near her temples, subtle biointerfaces responding to sound and motion. The metallic filaments along her long ears shimmered with each swell of music, as if they were translating the orchestra into private data streams. "You are studying me," she observed. "I study anything that could potentially alter interstellar relations." "And have I altered them?" "I think you've at least bent them." A faint warmth entered her gaze. "You speak without fear." "That's inaccurate. I'm simply too confused to process it." She guided me into a turn that felt less like spinning and more like falling sideways through softened gravity. The hall stretched around us in layered light, alien dignitaries moving in deliberate spirals, their garments embedded with shifting sigils of rank and lineage. Above, the aperture to space revealed a slow drift of distant stars, filtered through a containment field that shimmered whenever solar winds brushed against it. "Your species thrives in instability," she said. "We call it Tuesday." "And you find humor in danger." "We find humor in everything. It's cheaper than therapy." Her lips curved slightly again. The filaments along her ears brightened, then dimmed in a pattern that felt intentional. I leaned closer, lowering my voice. "Are those decorative, or are they recording my embarrassing statements?" "They enhance perception. So yes, they detect tonal shifts beyond human range." "Wonderful. So you can hear my panic in surround sound." "I hear curiosity," she corrected. That startled me more than if she had said fear. The tempo increased subtly. The floor projected faint constellations beneath our feet, mapping each step into fleeting star patterns that dissolved seconds later. I wondered how many political analysts were currently dissecting our footwork. "You did not request this dance," she said. "I was under the impression that declining would cause an incident." "It would not. Good to know for next time." "There may not be a next time." "That sounds ominous." "It is practical." We shifted into a closer hold as the music deepened. I became aware of the precise control in her movements. No wasted energy, no imbalance. Even in reduced gravity, she anchored herself effortlessly. Her long ears angled slightly backward as if focusing on a distant sound only she could hear. "Are you receiving instructions?" I asked. "No." "Monitoring threats?" "Always." "That's comforting." Her gaze sharpened slightly. "You are not afraid of me." "I'm trying to decide if that's wise." "Is it?" "I suppose that depends on whether you plan to conquer my planet." She paused just long enough for the joke to hang between us. "That would be inefficient," she said at last, relieved to hear it. The orchestra introduced a new instrument, something like a violin woven with light. Its notes shimmered in visible arcs before dissolving. Around us, several delegates pretended not to watch. A crystalline envoy rotated incrementally closer. A trio of aquatic diplomats adjusted the humidity field near their enclave. "You are being observed," she said. "I gathered that when the six-limbed ambassador stopped blinking. He has 3 sets of eyelids. Then he stopped blinking 3 times. She almost laughed again, almost. "Tell me," she said, "why did you attend?" "Because my superior said I'm good at not causing diplomatic catastrophes." "And are you?" "I haven't caused one yet." "You assume this is not one." "Is it?" She did not answer directly. Instead, she shifted our movement into a slower pattern, one that drew us toward the center of the hall. The light overhead dimmed fractionally, not enough for alarm, just enough to redirect attention. "There are factions within my court," she said quietly. "I assumed as much. We have factions too. We call them everyone. They question the inclusion of your species." "That's fair. We question ourselves regularly." "They believe humans are volatile." "That's also fair." Her eyes held mine steadily. "I wish to observe for myself." "You could have scheduled a meeting." "A meeting would produce rehearsed responses." "And a dance reveals balance." "Or lack thereof." "Yes." I considered that as we turned again beneath the drifting stars. The music softened, drawing us inward. "So this is an assessment?" I asked. "In part." "And the other part?" A pause, not hesitation, calculation. "Curiosity," she said, "about humanity." "About you." That was more destabilizing than any political implication. "I assure you," I said lightly, "I'm statistically unremarkable. Statistical models fail under certain variables." "I've always wanted to be a variable." Her long ears shifted subtly, filaments pulsing in a brief, synchronized glow. It felt like a signal, though I couldn't interpret it. The tempo slowed again. The dance was nearing its structured conclusion. I felt a strange reluctance at that realization. "You have not asked my name," she said. "I assumed that was intentional." "It was. And if I ask now, you may." I hesitated, then smiled beneath the fox mask. "I think I prefer the mystery. It's less likely to end up in a classified report." "Everything here will end up in a report." "Then I hope it's at least entertaining." The final movement began, a crescendo building through layered harmonics. Around us, dancers adjusted their spacing. The sound of fabric and armor shifting in unison echoed across the chamber. I remained standing. There are moments in life when your brain presents you with several possible reactions, and you choose the worst one by default. Mine selected. Mild confusion. I looked down at her. Her mask dissolved into particles of silver light dispersing upward like reversed snowfall. Without it, her features were unmistakable, precise, composed, impossibly steady. The faint geometric patterns along her skin brightened subtly, forming lines that traced from her temples down along her jaw. And her ears. Fully visible now, long and elegantly arched backward, adorned with luminous sigils woven into the metallic filaments. The filaments were no longer decorative. They formed a living crown of energy, faint arcs of light moving along their length in deliberate sequences. Imperial sequences. "Oh, oh," I said aloud. Someone near the edge of the hall made a distressed noise in 3 different frequencies. I attempted to kneel. Unfortunately, reduced gravity and delayed comprehension combined into something resembling a controlled fall. I descended half a second too late and slightly off balance. She caught my forearm before I collided with the illuminated floor. "You are not required to kneel," she said quietly. That information would have been useful 6 seconds ago. A ripple moved through the kneeling assembly. I felt it more than saw it, a disturbance in the pattern of obedience. Several nobles, ears angled subtly toward us, filaments pulsing with restrained alarm. You are, I began, because apparently stating the obvious was all I had left. Yes, she said. The title was not spoken aloud. It did not need to be. It shimmered above her in faint glyphs only visible now that the reveal protocol had completed. Empress, of course. Of course, the one person who chose me for a dance was the single most politically significant being in the quadrant. That's unfortunate, I murmured. Unfortunate? Her tone carried the faintest thread of amusement. I would have told better jokes. A noble in the second row choked on his own dignity. The Empress straightened, releasing my arm. The gravity field normalized, restoring the hall to formal alignment. One by one, the assembly rose at an invisible signal. The orchestra platform descended slightly, its instruments retracting into dormant configurations. The Empress's gaze remained on me. "You did not recognize me," she said. "I had a suspicion you were important." "How so?" "You moved like someone accustomed to being obeyed." A faint shift along her ears, approval, interest. I had no translation matrix for imperial body language. "And yet you spoke freely," she observed. "I assumed anonymity granted temporary courage." And now, I considered the room. Hundreds of eyes, multiple species. Several recording drones hovering discreetly near the ceiling, capturing every micro-expression for archival analysis. "Now," I said carefully, "I assume I'm about to be reassigned." A flicker, brief, controlled, touched her expression. "Escort," she said softly. Imperial guards stepped forward, not aggressively, not urgently, simply decisively. I raised a hand slightly. "Am I under arrest?" "No," she replied. "Good, I left my lawyer on Earth." A few diplomats looked horrified. One of the crystalline beings emitted a sharp, refracted sound that might have been laughter. We walked toward the center dais, which rose seamlessly from the floor in response to her approach. Light gathered beneath her feet, forming a subtle elevation above the rest of us. I remained at ground level, which felt appropriate. She turned to face the assembly. "The purpose of this gathering," she said, her voice amplified not by volume but by resonance fields embedded in the hall, "was evaluation." A ripple passed through the nobles. "Evaluation of what?" Someone ventured. "Adaptability," she answered. Her gaze flicked to me for a fraction of a second. There it was again, that deliberate focus. "You selected a human," another voice said, cautious but edged. "Yes." A pause. "Why?" The question hung in the air like a suspended blade. The Empress did not look at the speaker. She looked at me. "Because," she said calmly, "he did not attempt to impress me." I blinked. "That seems like a low bar," I muttered. "It is a rare one," she replied. A murmur spread through the hall, layered with disbelief and careful outrage. The filaments along her ears pulsed once, sharply. Silence followed immediately. "You interpret unpredictability as weakness," she continued. "I do not." That was when I realized the dance had not been entertainment. It had been demonstration. I shifted my weight slightly. "With respect," I said, because apparently I was incapable of silence. "If this was a test, I would like to know the grading criteria." Several heads turned toward me in alarm. The Empress regarded me steadily. "You remain balanced," she said, "in reduced gravity. In shifting political gravity." That was mostly confusion. Confusion did not cause you to retreat. I didn't know where to retreat to. A faint flicker of light traced along her ears again. The nobles were watching her now, not me, calculating, recalculating. One stepped forward. "Your Majesty, is this alignment intentional?" She did not hesitate. "Yes." The word landed with more force than any shouted decree. Intentional. I felt something settle into place around us, not visible but structural. A pivot point. The Empress descended from the dais. The light beneath her dimmed as she approached me once more. "You wish to understand," she said quietly. "I usually regret that wish. You will accompany me." "To where?" "My observatory." "Is that a promotion or a prelude to interrogation?" She regarded me for a long moment. "Both." I exhaled slowly. I was hoping for refreshments. "Those can be arranged." Behind us, the orchestra platform reactivated, not with music, but with soft, ambient harmonics meant to ease diplomatic shock. It was not entirely effective. As we began walking toward the far archway, I glanced back at Ambassador Havel. She looked as though she was calculating how to explain this to Earth without triggering a planetary panic. I gave her a small shrug. What else could I do? Ahead of me, the Empress moved with calm precision, her long ears catching the light of distant stars visible through the open aperture above. The metallic filaments along their edges glowed in steady, deliberate patterns. not decorative, not ornamental, signaling. And for reasons I could not yet articulate, I had the distinct impression that the real conversation was only just beginning. The observatory doors sealed behind us with a sound too soft to be threatening and too final to be comforting. I looked around. Please tell me this is the part where you offer tea and not the part where I'm analyzed at the molecular level. If I wish to analyze you at the molecular level, she said, walking toward the curved viewport, you would not be aware of it. Reassuring, the chamber was quieter than the ballroom, though not silent. A low harmonic hum vibrated through the structure, energy cycling through shielding systems, stellar radiation filtered and redirected. The transparent barrier before us displayed a live feed of the surrounding starfield, magnified and layered with data streams only faintly visible unless one focused. She stood with her hands loosely clasped behind her back. Her long ears angled slightly outward, the metallic filaments along them glowing in slow, deliberate sequences. You did not kneel immediately, she said. I processed slowly. You hesitated. I was trying to confirm I wasn't hallucinating. You assumed I was a noble. I assumed I was about to embarrass myself in front of one. And now I've embarrassed myself in front of an empress. It's an upgrade. Her lips curved faintly. Your pulse increased when the assembly knelt, she said. Most rooms don't drop to the floor on my behalf. It was not on your behalf. I gathered that. She turned slightly toward me. You are not offended. Should I be? Some humans interpret manipulation poorly. I wasn't manipulated. You were selected. That's just a more elegant word. Does the distinction matter? I considered that. It depends. Was I selected because I was convenient, or because I was useful? Her gaze sharpened, not cold but precise. You were selected because you are unscripted. That sounds like a flaw. It is. And it is also rare. I stepped closer to the viewport. The stars beyond seemed impossibly close, their light refracted through layered defense grids. A faint distortion rippled at the edge of the system, dark matter currents interacting with the palace's field generators. Your empire is stable, I said, very stable. Yes, and stability is starting to look fragile. Her ears flickered once sharply. You perceive that? I come from a species that trips over its own progress. We're good at recognizing cracks. There are pressures, she admitted, external, internal. Rogue AI clusters. Yes, expansionist coalitions. Yes, court politics. Her silence was answer enough. I folded my arms. And you decided the solution was dancing with a human. I decided the solution was testing unpredictability. That's flattering and slightly terrifying. You did not attempt to secure advantage. I didn't know there was advantage to secure. Precisely. A faint projection activated between us, forming a three-dimensional map of nearby sectors. Several regions pulsed in muted red. These systems have destabilized in the last cycle, she said. Trade disruptions, infrastructure failures, coordinated sabotage. By whom? Unknown. That's never good. No, the projection shifted, zooming inward. I saw faint anomalies in the data, patterns that repeated just enough to imply intention. You believe someone is engineering instability, I said. I believe someone is testing response thresholds. Like you tested me. Yes. I let out a slow breath. And how did I perform? You remained centered. That was gravity compensation. You maintained humor. That was self-defense. You did not posture. I didn't realize I was competing. She stepped closer, close enough that I could see the subtle geometric patterns along her skin pulse faintly in sync with the projection's light. My court excels at posturing, she said, at projecting certainty. And you're not certain. No. That admission carried more weight than any decree she had spoken in the ballroom. I require perspectives that do not originate within my hierarchy, she continued. Perspectives that are not invested in preserving its illusions. You want an outsider. Yes, you have entire advisory councils. They tell me what maintains equilibrium. And you want to disturb it. I want to prevent collapse. There it was, not conquest, not dominance, prevention. You think humanity is good at preventing collapse? I asked. You are good at surviving it. Different skill set. Adaptable, chaotic, resilient, stubborn, I corrected. Yes. The projection shifted again. One of the red systems brightened slightly, then dimmed. That fluctuation, I said. That's not random. No, it's bait. She studied me carefully. Explain. If someone's testing thresholds, they escalate just enough to trigger response without provoking full retaliation. They want to map your reaction time, your command chain. You believe this is strategic. I believe someone's dancing with you. Her eyes held mine, and you believe I am stepping incorrectly. I think you're stepping predictably. Silence stretched between us, not hostile but charged. You are bold, she said at last. I'm unemployed if this goes poorly. A faint sound escaped her, almost laughter but softer. You assume your position is precarious, she said. Isn't it? No, that stopped me. Why not? Because the decision has already been made. Which decision? Her ears brightened subtly, filaments aligning in a synchronized pulse. You will serve as liaison to the joint exploratory fleet. I blinked. I will what? You will accompany Imperial Command to assess emerging destabilization events. That sounds like a job. It is. You didn't ask. You would have refused. That's not. You would have hesitated. I paused, yes. Time does not permit hesitation. I stared at the projection again, at the red systems pulsing like quiet warnings. You realize, I said slowly, that my superiors are going to panic. They already